Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews. And first things first, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. It is December 25th, and that means we're opening the last door of our 2020 Advent calendar of Christmas horror movies. And to kind of end with a bit of a bang, I wanted to have a little bit of a flourish here, and so I will be reviewing every movie in the Gingerdead Man franchise. Before I get to that though, I do want to remind everybody out there that in 2 days' time, at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, December 27th, I will be doing my end of year recap live stream. It's going to be a good time. I really hope you'll join me there. So, the Gingerdead Man franchise, I had never actually seen these before. And that was a little bit of an issue. It turned into an issue. Because the one thing that I kept seeing was people mentioning it in their top blank of whatever Christmas horror movies, but the one thing I could never find is how it was associated with Christmas, aside from the whole gingerbread man thing, which doesn't necessarily have to belong to the holidays. People do it year-round with gingerbread men and so on and so forth, but even with the holiday spirit, it's both assigned to Christmas time and Easter. So exclusivity to Christmas, I couldn't really wrap my brain around, and I couldn't find any information. But I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go through with this anyway. I'm going to watch all 4 movies, and I am going to tell you right here and now that if you're in the position that I was, and you've seen people put in lists of top 25 Christmas horror movies, The Gingerdead Man, clearly getting a chuckle out of the pun of the name and the lunacy of the concept, but not actually sitting down and clicking play on the movie, that these movies have nothing to do with Christmas. Welcome to the Advent calendar, I guess. I mean, sometimes I'll put in a movie that just has a very loose association. It'll take place around Christmas time. You might see a tree in the background, something like that. But for the most part, it's not centered around Christmas. It's not integral to the plot. This time, this has nothing at all to do with it whatsoever across any of the 4 movies, period. So as far as it showing up on best of any Christmas horror movie list, I don't see it. I don't think it really justifies being there. And I think that anybody that puts it there, I would question whether or not they actually fucking watched the movie. But I did, all 4 of them, and now it's time to tell you what I think. Directed by Charles Band, written by William Butler and Dominic Muir, this movie starts out by showing Gary Busey as a killer of diner patrons. And there's a surviving girl throughout this, and then it fast forwards a bit after the whole massacre of her family, and now she is running the bakery that her father once did before his untimely execution. And we find out that Gary Busey's character was executed in the electric chair based on her testimony and so on and so forth. So she's recovering from all this. And we also come to find out that Gary Busey's character had a gypsy for a mother, and a mysterious package was dropped off at the bakery door full of gingerbread spices. Also, coincidentally, we find out that when he was put to death, that his remains were cremated and they were sent to his mother. Thus begins an unfortunate chain of events that leads to him being baked up as a killer cookie. That's pretty much the run of this. This is a full moon picture. All 4 of them are full moon pictures, and it really just kind of shrieks of that level of quality. And I would be lying if I said that I really enjoyed this movie a whole lot. And here's the deal, is running a horror movie channel, there are some expectations and acceptances that have to be put into place. But I gotta say, my expectations for this movie are probably along the lines of a lot of people that actually watched it and clicked play, and that is killer cookie mayhem. We wanted to see a killer cookie running around slashing people and making baking jokes. That's pretty much it. It's what we wanted, it's what we clicked play for, it's what the poster suggests, and so on and so forth. And I have no problem if that's what the movie delivered. But you know what? It didn't. At least not to the degree that I found satisfactory. This movie had an hour and 10-minute runtime, relatively short, but over 10 minutes of that were actually devoted to nothing but the end credits somehow. So that left about an hour or so of actual content. And of that, I was noticing something kind of peculiar, so I did something that, well, I'm not terribly proud of, but even so, I wanted to verify something. and I went through and I started watching it, and I started a little stopwatch of any time that the Gingerdead Man was on screen and or killing somebody, even if it just switched over to a different angle, you didn't see him. But if he was in action, I wanted to time it. And in this hour-long worth of content, we had 4.5 minutes of Gingerdead Man mayhem. The rest of it was all bullshit. It was all character dialogue about how when you were 6, you attended my birthday party and I gave you a black eye, and don't you remember that, and so on and so forth. And all these characters interacting with one another as the bakery is in jeopardy. And it's not what I clicked play for. It's not cookie mayhem. So even just taking the ridiculousness of the concept at face value and saying that, yes, this is the kind of thing I want to watch, I'm going to say that I think that this one was a bit disappointing. Well, more than a bit. It was very disappointing. And honestly, it's a weird thing to say, but in the original part of this franchise, I just can't really recommend this one. But at the same time, I think it's also worth finding out if the sequels will maybe fix this issue. Let's go ahead and find out. Gingerdead Man 2, Passion of the Crust, the 2008 movie directed by Sylvia St. Croix. So at this point, we're basically just completely ignoring the circumstances that led to the outcome of the first movie and just jumping right into a movie set that is very similar and striking to Full Moon Pictures. It's basically a punch-em-out horror and sci-fi movie studio that does them quick and cheap and plentiful. And so there's a lot of self-referential humor, digs at the studio that's actually funding and producing this particular film. And in this studio, somebody brings in a box of treats, including the Gingerdead Man, whereupon he runs havoc on the studio and the directors and producers and special effects artists and so on and so forth. Oddly, this also has the subtitle beyond Passion of the Crust as Bakery of Blood, which I thought was weird considering that this had fuck all to do with actually being in a bakery. So as one might expect, this is full of the lowest common denominator of humor, with just poop and fart and homophobic jokes just rampant throughout the entire thing. But does this actually fix the errors of the first movie and actually employ some decent amount of screen time to cookie mayhem? And I would have to say, yes, it actually does. It still had a fair number of issues, not the least of which is I actually didn't find the humor to be that funny at all. I don't think this got so much as a smirk, much less a chuckle or a guffaw out of me. But taking that away, just looking at the whole cookie mayhem thing, it did ramp that up and it made it a lot more creative. There were a lot more aspects that applied to it. We had some interesting kind of little nods to the whole movie making industry. We had a cameo by Greg Nicotero in this one as a special effects artist. There's all sorts of little winks and nods and so forth that make this kind of a fun watch. But if you're looking for wry, dry, or highbrow humor, I would have to say, what the fuck are you doing turning on Gingerdead Man 2? Of course not. It's just not that clever. It's just more, again, the poop and fart jokes and so on and so forth. If I had to really give kind of a storyline critique of this one, I would say that it really can't seem to keep its eye on the prize as far as the antagonist. It keeps introducing other characters that blossom into antagonists of this film set and of this director and this producer that's trying to get things going, and the Gingerdead Man is just kind of happens to be hacking up people and making jokes to himself in the background until things kind of reach a climactic head. Even so, I did find it to be just a hair more palatable than the first movie by only being a little bit less boring. So I guess on that, I would say that I softly don't not recommend it a whole lot. Yeah. Up next to the 2011 movie, Gingerdead Man 3, Saturday Night Cleaver. I think traditionally, and not always, it's not a hard and fast rule, but traditionally, by and large, a franchise has gone completely fucking off the rails when it does one of two things. Either it goes to space, or it goes back in time. And that's exactly what this movie did, as the Gingerdead Man starts out locked up in a Silence of the Lambs style institution along with other naughty baked goods. until he breaks free and winds up strolling into a culinary time machine laboratory and finds himself going back to 1976. Now, if you have no budget and you need to set things in the 1970s, what's the best way to do that? Well, you could go to a classic car show and hope that the owners of them will appreciate what you're trying to do and volunteer their services, or you can just rent out a roller skating rink and shoot there the entirety of the movie, one location, and get some fans of Full Moon Pictures to show up in period somewhat accurate clothing and volunteer their services. And that's exactly what this movie did. Only one location, only in a skating roller rink, only in kind of a disco-esque setting in which this particular skating rink is, of course, owing back taxes and on the verge of bankruptcy. This is their last night to pull out one last stop so that we can keep it together, guys. So this is a continuation of the same lowbrow, same bottom of the barrel type of humor, but I would have to say that this movie started strong and ended strong. The whole Silence of the Lambs things that this movie started out with, I was hating myself for how much I was actually enjoying it. It was stupid, yes, but I still managed to get a good smile out of it. And the end definitely ended strong with absolute over-the-top silly campiness. The problem was the entire rest of the movie. The whole subplot about saving the roller rink and a character that was very Carrie-like, named Cherry. The whole subplots involving all the people that the Gingerdead Man is going around in the background slashing up was just completely uninteresting. And not only that, but being set in a roller rink with disco, we had the same generic disco music that was completely unidentifiable but somehow grating at the same time play for almost a full hour. I was so fucking sick of this damned disco music. I could not tell you how much I wanted to turn this movie off. I'm glad that it ended with a flourish. It kind of made it seem like the watch may have been somewhat worth it, but it was a struggle to get there. This time, the Gingerdead Man does go through a little bit of a redesign between the second and the third movie. It becomes a little bit more expressive with eyes that open more, mouth that opens more, so on and so forth. And for the first time, they actually do full body motion in really bad CG. But I would have to say, as far as whether I recommend it or not, does it really fucking matter? If you're going to be watching the Gingerdead Man series and you've made it to 3, it's not going to hinge on whether or not I give you the green light. So all I'll really say is I enjoyed it to a slight degree at the beginning and at the end, and it was a painful ride in between. And last but perhaps not least, the 2013 movie Gingerdead Man vs. Evil Bong. So traditionally, what I do is with the crossover events like this, I did this with Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys, was before reviewing that one, I did want to go back and look at the Demonic Toys movie that started it and get some frame of reference so that I could watch them and review that movie head to head. I didn't actually do a review of Demonic Toys, I just wanted the foundational knowledge. But there had been, I think, 4 or 5 Evil Bong movies before this one, and fuck that. I'm sorry, but no. And you know what? I'm really glad that I didn't, because this entire movie, the entire first half of it, damn near at the very least, was devoted to catching people up on both sides. We had flashbacks galore of the Evil Bong people and their story and so forth, and what had happened in all the movies leading up to that point, eventually establishing that he was still in possession of the Evil Bong that was kind of held captive behind a wall safe. Fuck, man. And then went back to the bakery with the surviving girl from the first movie and brought her back and showed her tale, not really showing the second or third movies, but just kind of making this the next entry after the first. So it kind of pulled a bit of a Superman Returns on this one. Regardless, this was just a whole lot of catch up and flashbacks, and the movie didn't really start with the plot progression in terms of the triggering catalytic events that led to any of the characters doing anything of value until, I would have to say, about the 2/3 mark. And by that time, I just could not care. The over-the-top ridiculousness of the concept really wasn't a huge selling point to me. I'm not in middle school anymore. It's not a big old chuckle fest, but I still was kind of interested in finding out just how far this franchise could go. And unfortunately, that was my big problem with this one, was not only did it not really get going until the 2/3 mark, but when it ended, spoiler free, sure, but when it ended, it didn't really end. It just kind of stopped. It decided, well, this is good enough. Characters are where they're at. Time to roll end credits. Nothing really felt resolved at all. And it's not like I'm looking for Shakespearean story structure here, but a little bit of coherency and resolution would have been a bit nice, especially considering that this was the 4th movie in the series. I had just watched them all in one day, and to have it just kind of on its way out to the end credits felt a little bit unsatisfactory. In this one, the Gingerdead Man does undergo some further redesigns from the 3rd movie, getting a little bit more of an uglier, dirtier look, and instead of having any kind of puppetry to it, well, we had a lot of puppetry even so, but the mouth movements was done Clutch Cargo style this time, with somebody actually mouthing it and having it injected into the puppet itself. And I don't know, for me it just felt, well, it doesn't really matter. It felt stupid, but this was a stupid fucking movie. So what do you really expect? Anybody that watches this knows what they're going to be getting. And on that note, I would have to say that this stands alongside the 2nd and 3rd movies as far as the stupidity that you expect when you click play, you're going to get. The real standout for me as far as which one I would really actively not recommend to anybody interested in the Gingerdead Man series was the first one, considering how little cookie mayhem there actually was. So I think that should about wrap this all up. I really thank you for joining me here today. Merry Christmas again. Don't watch Gingerdead Man or any of the sequels unless you're really, really high. I guess that's my main takeaway point. If you can come away with anything from this video, make it that. Just smoke a whole lot if you're going to, and then watch this. But nobody sober and nobody alone should ever watch this. This is an inebriated with friends type franchise. Period. End of story. Merry Christmas. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.